Welcome back, everyone. We are back with Empowering Growth Project. This is episode 6. I'm Alex, and I'm here with my co-hosts, John, Bear, and Lisa. We are so excited to be back with you for another episode. And this week, we want to share a little bit about mission, purpose. I was listening to a podcast this week by Lewis Howes. He does the School of Greatness. It's a great show. Love Lewis. And he was talking about the idea of a meaningful mission. And more specifically, he was sharing how during periods of his life where he has been or felt kind of lost was when at a time in his life when he didn't have or didn't feel like he had a meaningful mission or really a purpose to what he was doing, or maybe even had the wrong things as his purpose, as his mission. So for example, chasing the idea of success, where we know success is something that's very fleeting and also very changing, really, depending on how you would define success. So I found that really interesting, and we wanted to really bring that to the table. I would love to hear from you guys. What's something that you would define as your mission? How has it evolved over the last few months or years? And what would you really say to all this about the power of mission to drive you forward?
My mission is connecting and encouraging others, and to encourage others to say, hey, you're not fixed in your mindset. So many people they think that this is just the way I am. I can't create my life. Things happen to me. You get caught where you give all your power away because you play the victim, and you don't realize that you can create your own life with your thoughts, and that you actually have, and that all those negative thoughts, you are creating your own life, and your reticulating activating system, which is something, Anyway, it's out there looking for it, and I call it like your little Google monkey, your search engine, and whatever you ask for, it's going to verify and it's going to validate it for you, and you're going to feel like you're a victim versus that you can change your thoughts, and you're a creation of your thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And that's my mission, is to put awareness on that people can change that, and to expose and share tools from different people, and different podcasts, different hosts, different whatever, and bring on people and have them share their stories, and show what I really want to, my mission is to show people how they start and how they progress, and to share that to inspire others that they can do the same thing.
I love that. I think when I was younger, I really got caught in that, like, my purpose. Like I've always had a drive for doing a lot. Like I always wanted to be successful, and I always knew that I would work hard and strive for success. But I think when I was younger, I kind of fell into that trap of like the materialistic side of success, and just wanting it because of the stuff, honestly, to be completely candid. When you're young, often that's, what we fall into or buy into that trap. And it was because of the stuff, or, how much money or what you would be able to do. And well, I don't think that there's anything wrong with making money, but now it's, as I've grown, even in the last 10 years, that has completely shifted my mindset towards what my mission is. Now, I recently shared that we're expecting our first daughter, and now I think a lot that goes into my everyday work is I want to leave a legacy, a story of creating choices. Really, I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I want to leave for her, is creating choices, and also empowering girls and women in business, and but really coming at it from a place of wholeness. And you're going to achieve success, but it's going to be for the right reasons, and you're going to bring a lot of people with you on that journey. It's not just about you alone. So it's definitely evolved as I've gotten older.
I'd like to touch real quick back on what John was talking about. Kind of that a lot of times when you're in that victimhood, if you will, it's very easy to receive what we call, or what's called confirmation bias, right? Where you feel a certain way, and so you Google things, but then as you're Googling things, Googling symptoms or whatever, then all of a sudden, all of the things that you are Googling agree with whatever diagnosis you're giving yourself, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so then it's like, well, yeah, but this website said this, and this website said this. And so you get that, it strengthens that confirmation bias, right? But then all of a sudden someone comes along and says, okay, but did you look over here at this one? Well, yeah, but that doesn't fit my narrative, so I don't want to talk about that one. And because this one, and this one all said, and we see it a lot in the political realm. We see it a lot in the mental health realm, in a lot of ways. But you get this confirmation bias that keeps you, or can keep you, stuck in whatever mode you're in, because you found all of these things that agree. I had a really good friend who was severely depressed, and I will not ever make light of mental health issues or anything like that, but she was severely depressed. Well, all she would post on social media were memes and posts from her depression groups. And I was like, hey, have you thought about looking over at a positive mindset group, or a different area? Because all you're doing is confirming your diagnosis, rather than saying, okay, this is a thing. Is there something I can do to overcome how I'm feeling in the moment? And so, yeah. But when you can open people's minds to the other that's out there, and I applaud you, John, for that, because it's huge to help open people's eyes, and open people who are willing, because it's very difficult for someone to change when they're not willing or wanting to change. But if they're open and their mind is open to alternatives, then it's huge.
I think that also has a lot to do with identity, right? It's a lot about somebody might identify with whatever that negativity is, right? Whether it's like a diagnosis or something, and it like becomes something that they are, or they think they are. And it's hard to break that when you don't have the shift in perspective, right? And that's part of what we talk about in growth and in personal growth. It's really being able to look at like the different perspectives and see something from a different angle and be like, oh, wait, okay, I can look at that differently. Like, I might have a diagnosis, but that diagnosis is not me.
It's not me.
Right? It's like, it's the same thing that happens with entrepreneurs. Like, you might have something that fails. It's an event. It's a failure. Yes, it was a failure. The event was a failure, but that doesn't make me the failure, right? Like, that's where I struggled with that identity issue for like quite some time. And when we're talking about like the purpose and having like that mission that's like driving you, I would say most of my life, I didn't have that. I had a passion for horses and a bit of an obsession with horses, which I think got me through a lot of things. However, yeah, just a little one. But it wasn't really a mission per se, right? And so it was actually going to Tony Robbins, UPW, at a point in time where I was really like trying to shift. I was not really happy with what was going on, and kind of had just been reacting from life for so long. And it was getting clear on what my values were. It was the first time I had somebody actually talk about like, do you know what your values are? Do you know like what you really care about? Like, are you even aware of those things? And I think that was a big eye opener for me. And it did take a little bit of time, right? Like, I came up with some things during UPW, and then it kind of like kept evolving. And since I keep going back and looking at what and like building on it, that's what's really helped me develop a a mission, like, or a mission driven, so my mission is to create connection, empowerment, and joy in the world, right? So it's like I'm really into helping others have empowerment, and that's because I was empowered even by that event that got me to like see things from a different point of view, to actually give me like that purpose, the reason why I'm doing something, right? Like, okay, yeah, the horses was a reason because I love the horses, but now it's like, okay, I actually have a mission, and everything that I do in my day aligns with that mission. And the horses are part of it, right? They become part of it, part of that passion. But it's really in looking at that on a daily basis also that makes it possible to not have that push. Because in the beginning, when I was starting out in this realm, it was more of a push. I didn't really know. I wasn't 100% sure. I was really upset about things that had happened in my life, and I had the wrong story going on. And so it was really more like a push to get that organized. And then once I got really clear on what my values were, what is important to me, what is like, if you look out, a few years, like, what do you really want? What are you even aware? I think I think there's a lot of people that can't even identify that. If you said, like, what do you want? They'd be like, more money. It's like, no. Like, what do you really want? Like, what's the driver? And that becomes the pulling force. And I would say that that's been huge, like even in building the Dark Horse Project as an idea, that I was like, okay, I've got this idea. All right, I'm getting clear on my values. And then all of a sudden, once that started to align, then the next piece is really aligning with your values, right? Because a lot of times, especially in victim mentality, what we're struggling with is, well, quite a few things. But it's in that like identity once again, right? It's like there's that struggle of not having the clear values, having been disappointing yourself. You've kind of gotten to a point where there's like disappointments, and you, by not being clear on what your values are, you kind of start to not trust yourself. And then there's little things that'll happen. And as the little things happen, they're like what little white lies to yourself. And those little white lies to yourself, then you stop trusting yourself. And I would say that's where I was. I was at a point where I really, like, I know I'm a good person, yet I didn't trust myself because I couldn't even hold my own word for myself, right? It's part of that like discipline and learning the daily habits that you like, oh, wait, I actually have confidence. Wait, I actually can do this. Wait, I can set out and achieve a goal that I've, set forth. And so it's not just lip service, right? So it's in doing that and really aligning with your values that has been like the game changer for me. I mean, that went from like, my life is completely transformed because of that little bit. Those little things have been the game changer that really, I feel like I wake up every morning with a lot of purpose and a lot of mission. And it's not just one thing, right? Like a lot of people are like, what's my purpose? Like, it's not just one. I think we have multiple purposes, right? We play different roles, we do different things. And so it's really like going back to that values, knowing what my values are, seeing the best way that I can align with those values. And the more you align with them, the more you trust yourself. The more you trust yourself, the easier it is to be on that mission and kind of like keep that path. So I would say like for me, it goes to identity. Like I just started, it's like, it's changing my identity. My identity was not trusting of myself. My identity was a failure. And so it's in shifting that to actually, I have strong values. Actually, I'm in alignment with my values. That is empowering. And that will give you like so much more energy to actually have that mission, go after something. And it helps you step outside. Brendan Burchard always talks about like the gates or the 4 gates, right? It helps you step out of that like self mode and into service mode, and really being able to show up and serve others as that servant leader, as that role model, because we need that in this world. So I feel like that's like a super important part for me when you're talking about like the purposeful missions.
Yeah, well, and you start to make decisions on a daily basis that support that mission, right? When you have that clear, and often we have values that we don't even realize we've defined for ourselves, right? Like so often a lot of what we do is, you know, to feel, for example, significant. That's a big one for a lot of people, right? And so they'll make decisions unconsciously from a place of wanting to feel or trying to look significant. And often those can come from the wrong place when it's not you know, when it's not something that was intentionally thought out and created. So I think having that clear mission, and I love that you talked about values because it perfectly aligns, right? Like, what's your mission? What's your purpose? I think the meaningful mission really has to be something that's greater than yourself, because let's be honest, like there will come a time when that's not big enough to move you. And it really has to be something very strong and very clear and larger than you to be able to move you, and then knowing what your values are that are in alignment with that.
Yeah, and to kind of go along with that too, it's understand, or it's easy to forget, but it's also easy to understand that your mission evolves. As you grow and evolve, so grows your mission, and so evolves your mission as well. And it's very important to understand that. And so, you know, we were kind of talking before we hit the record button earlier, you know, that the idea of purpose and mission can sometimes feel a little bit abstract. And the reason that it feels abstract is because it's subjective. My mission is different than John's, and John's is different than Lisa's, and Lisa's is different than Alex's, and Alex's is different than mine. And understanding that, it is a very unique piece, because we could, all four of us, say that we could word our mission exactly the same. All four of us could say the same exact things, but as that mission gets carried out, we do it four different ways, and we do it four different ways based on our individual experiences. And so it can be easy to kind of get lost in the idea of mission. You know, for me, my mission is to show people what's possible, you know, and it goes to the identity that Lisa talked about. You know, for a lot of years, I identified as a victim because of child abuse, you know, childhood abuse. And it's very interesting because I said, I am a victim, I am a victim, I am a victim. But the moment I said, I have been victimized, took that identity away from me. And I've done this with clients of mine. You know, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, and I'm like, and I will actually say to them, and it's kind of one of those shocking things, if you will, but I'll say, I'm a car. And they're like, what do you mean you're a car? And I'm like, well, if you get to be depressed, then I get to be a car. And they're like, well, you have a car. And I'm like, exactly. You have depression. You are not depressed. That is not your identity. And when you understand that, then it goes from, this is who I am,
right,
to this is just something I have. And when you understand that it's just something you have, then it starts to open your mind to the possibility that what you have can be dealt with. What you are can't always be dealt with.
right.
And so, like I said, for me, it's about showing people what's possible. You know, I made my audacious announcement this morning that I'm going to do a half marathon and a 100-mile ride on the same day in 6 months. But the cool thing is the reason that I do that is because I want to show people what is possible. And yes, it's possible for me, but let's start to open your mind and expand to see, okay, what's possible for you? Maybe you're not going to be able to run a half marathon in 6 months, but what could you do in 6 months that's different than what you're doing right now? What's an audacious goal that you can make for yourself 6 months from now? What's possible for you?
Yeah, I love that. I think anytime you connect something to your identity, like going back to that identity, it's really, really like kind of dangerous if it's not the right thing, because yeah, like something that is you becomes you. How do you start to unlink that if it's no longer serving you anymore. You know, I for years was on antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds because I was told that I had depression and anxiety, and I bought into that identity. That was who I was. I was depressed, I was anxious, and it was part of every aspect of my life, you know. And it wasn't until literally also UPW, like this is like sponsor us at this point because
Right.
but like no, this is not a commercial for UPW, but it really is like speaking to how big and drastic of a change this event was in my life also, because it wasn't until certain exercises that you go through during that event where I literally looked at it from a different perspective. Like I was not me looking at it from, you know, but I was looking at it from the outside in. And it was like, that's not who I am. It's something that I've dealt with, yes. And that allowed me to literally like unhook those two things. Like that wasn't me anymore. It was something that I went through. And literally just being able to see it that way allowed me to open my mind and be like, you know what, let me see what else I can do to heal my brain, because you literally can. And that's the magical thing, is like trauma can change your brain, but you can also heal your brain. You have that ability through like tons of different ways, right? So but I wouldn't have even like clicked to even think that way if I had continued stuck in that mentality of this is who I am, like this is my identity for the rest of my life, because that's literally what I was told.
And the sad part is so many people buy into that. And I find it fascinating how quickly as humans, we buy into the negative thing. If somebody said, oh, you're depressed, you suffer from depression, you're like, oh, and you go around, that becomes your identity, versus somebody tell you, oh, you're happy and you suffer from toxic positivity,
yeah.
or something. And you know, even they even call it toxic, right? It's like, and then you're like, oh no, I could never be like that. But you'll buy the negative one. And it's amazing to me how we do that. And in Lewis's book, he says a mission calls upon the deeper parts of your souls and moves us to attempt something greater than ourselves. So your mission is, because you can want numbers, you can want success, you can, dollars, whatever, but they bring you no satisfaction whatsoever. You hit them or you don't hit them. You're depressed because you can get sad because you didn't hit them, or you hit them and then you get sad because you didn't feel anything. You're like, what now? I did it. But if you have a mission that's greater than yourself, and if you're on a journey, which is the key to life, is realize you're on a journey in everything you're doing, and not really you can set goals and points, but that you're in a journey of growth and enjoy it as you're moving through it. And you'll always feel satisfied, and you'll just evolve, especially if you can look back to see where you were.
Yeah. And John, you just hit on something very, very important. And that's the idea that life is that journey, right?
Yeah.
And this is the one commonality that all human beings have, actually all living things have, and that is that there will be an end to that life. And I know it's easy to think about that in this morbid sense. It's like, oh my gosh, my life's going to end. Well, it is. And if you haven't figured that out yet, well, shocker alert or spoiler alert. But really though, understanding that though, when you understand that, it's like, okay, that is, yes, the final destination. However, what can I do to create a legacy that carries on after I have left this earth? And when you understand that, and when you understand that your legacy can carry you past that moment, it can be huge, because that can then be that driving force for your personal mission, for your purpose. And recognizing that, oh my gosh. I mean, my dad, he's been gone for 20 years, over 20 years now. Almost this year will be 21 years now.
Wow.
But understanding that, I've always said, a lot of times we talk about people who have passed on in the past tense, but I actually say that I like to refer to my dad in the present. He is, because the messages and the lessons that he taught me and the principles that he taught me carry on through me. And understanding that, it's beautiful, because then it's like, okay, his mission is still not fulfilled. He's
Right.
been gone physically for over 20 years, but his mission is still being carried out. And understanding that, that's a goal worthy, that's a goal worth having for all of us.
Right. And as an OG, an older guy, you get to a point, like I'm at that point kind of where it's like, wow, I don't have time to waste. Well, I don't want to watch TV and watch a show that's going to just try to play on my emotions, because like I went to go see, I think I might have said this, that long Avatar movie. And when it was like done, I'm all like, that was like 3 hours I'll never get back. And what I'm saying is that, I mean, when you're younger, you think you got all this time. You're like, someday. Well, as you get older, and especially if you had a calendar that shows summers that you have left, and it's there's maybe like 15 or 11 or whatever, you don't even know, right? But you're like, I got to do stuff now. And if the younger you can have that mindset of like, just start moving forward and let it yourself get momentum and go. Don't wait till someday, because pretty soon,
you can't really see it, but I've got
there it is right there.
My planner right here.
Oh, does it have summers in it?
What's weird is there's never a someday in a calendar.
No, I know.
You ever thought about that? There is never a someday in any calendar you've ever looked at. There's never a someday.
I know.
And yeah, understanding the power of letting some days get to you versus, there is no someday in this calendar. I've got to do it today, tomorrow at the latest. Yesterday would be preferred.
Yeah,
but
take action.
Yeah, you've got to do it, because there is no someday. There's no magical place in the Pacific Ocean called Someday Isle.
No.
And so you've got to remember that. So yeah, it's important.
I love that you talked about your dad in that way, because I had the same feeling towards my mom. My mom passed away in 2009 from pancreatic cancer. And I think today she's even stronger in me than ever before. And it's so true that it's what she taught me is now actually helping empower other people, right? So what she did is like, and raise me with the values that I have, and instilled a lot of pieces that are super important today. And I love that you talk about your dad in the present tense, right? Because I think that is so true. And it also helps, when you have somebody that passes, it's easy to get stuck on like the sadness side of it. And I would say one of the things that helped me was really that focus of like the positive of all of the things that she did teach me, all of the things, and she's only a thought away, right? Like all I got to do is think of my mom, and I think of her all the time. Actually, her best friend sent me an email the other day and was like, every time I see tulips, I think of your mom, because they went on a trip to Amsterdam together. And I was like,
nice.
I love that. I'm like, every time I see the little purple rose that my mom loved, like I think of her. So there's so many times that she's right there. And I know that like for anybody that's had family members that passed, right? It's same thing that we're talking about getting stuck in that negative loop. It's easy to get stuck in the sad side, but it's just as equally possible to see all the positive, right? To really think of all of the good memories and to really bring up those feelings. So I think that's like a super important piece. And then totally a separate topic is I want to go back to what Alex talked about changing your brain and about the fact that you really can do that. And so I have this book, which is The Brain's Way of Healing. This is a really good book about how to heal your brain and about all of the ways that they've found, whether it's from lights to hot cold therapy to walking. There's so many things that you can do to actually really improve your brain's function, to actually change your brain's function. And I think that that's super important to know, because it's going back to that same thing we've been talking about, like the identity of like, okay, yeah, you have depression, or so my significant other is bipolar. And that is, that's a hard one, because it's actually a really intense thing. And I would not wish it on my worst enemy, because it is a very hard emotional disorder, right? It's like the ability to stay at an even keel on the emotions, like the emotions, remember, those are automatic, they're physical, they just happen. So when you have a disorder like that, it's hard to regulate your emotions. And the amount of things that we've been able to do to help him with his brain is unbelievable. And so I would encourage anybody who is struggling with, feeling like their brain's not working, or depression, or anything that's like not working quite right, know that there is a way, and know that it is possible to change that. There's so many things you can do. And so I just highly recommend anybody looking into that. And I just want to encourage anybody who is, who, even if you've thought for the last time, oh, my brain doesn't work, or oh, I'm not as smart, or okay, I also entered college with a 4th grade reading and writing level. Okay. And so because I had a learning disability and I struggled for so long, the coolest thing is that these days, my vocabulary, writing skills, all of that is fairly decent. I mean, I would say even probably above board of most, and it's because I spent the time to learn it. Yes, it took me a little bit longer to learn, but don't give up, right? So that's like something I just want to encourage anybody, like, just because you're in a certain situation today doesn't mean that's your future. And I think that's really important when we talk about, when we're going back to the mission, it's, it's really being aware that you're stronger than you think. The future does hold good things for you. And you need to keep looking at those things, right? It's that choice. Like, am I going to look at the negative side of this, or am I going to look at the positive? And it's like really taking that choice to really focus on, okay, what would make a better future? What would improve my situation? Because you actually have a lot more agency than you think most of the time. So,
Right. The Dr. Amen, he just came out with a book, Change Your Brain Every Day. And he's the guy that does the brain scans, and he can show before and afters.
I love him. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I just got his book.
Yeah.
Right. And he had, and this thing's broken down into 366 days, because this year's a leap year. And every day you have a thing, and he has you write something out. And his thing is, every time you do something, ask yourself, is this good for my brain or not good for my brain? So like, if you're going to eat something maybe sugary or something or whatever, or a drink or anything, because it affects your brain, you're affecting your brain. And the other guy, Jim Quick, they called him, he had a head injury when he was little, and the teacher called him the boy with the broken brain, but he's found ways to do amazing things. And that's like someone else to follow, because you can change anything that you just put your mind to, and you just little steps at a time. But that victim mentality is full of, I can't do this. You give all your power away. You give it away to somebody else. You're like, I'm powerless. I can't do it. Instead of saying, I can do this, and take responsibility for your actual actions to move forward and take your power back. And because I mean, I was thinking, like, sometimes I hear people, like younger people, go, I'll never buy a house. I'll never do this. And I remember when I was younger saying the same thing, because the houses have gone huge. But everybody seems to somehow do it. But there are people who don't, and they don't because they just have that mindset that I can't, and it's too much. It's too much. And you just have to just do it. You have to change your mindset. That's where it starts.
Yeah, I love that. I love Dr. Amen. Definitely, like, got a lot of information from him when I was going through that process of weaning off my medication, because it was just something, it wasn't even that the medication made me feel good, because half the time I was like going through life as a zombie, because the dose was so high, and it was like, well, this doesn't make me feel good. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I don't want to depend on this because I was told I would literally be on medication for the rest of my life. And I was like,
Oh.
I refuse. Like, but it was because I made that shift in mindset from this is not my identity. It's just something that I've dealt with, and it doesn't have to be that way for the rest of my life. Started doing a lot of research. Dr. Amen was one of the people that I learned tons and tons from. Even like if you go on his social media, like he has tons of free information on there on like supplements, nutrition things, and he does the scans where you can literally see like how the brain goes from this state to this state over just making a series of different choices. Like that's literally all it is. But it's, and you know, like most doctors won't agree that that's the case. I remember the next time after when I went to the doctor and they were like, oh, so I'll refill your prescription. And I was like, no, that's okay. And they were like, but you need it. I was like, no, I'm fine. And I've been off it now for like 2 years and literally never felt better in my life, but it's because of those things. So yeah, love that. Well, yeah, do you want
to say one last thing? It was Dr. Amen that I by reading one of his books, it was where I decided to stop drinking alcohol. And May 7th will be 2 years without alcohol. And not that I had a drinking problem.
No.
The issue is it affects your brain. And I'm
So
trying to
much.
build a very large company. And I was like, wait, I can't do that and that. Like those don't work together, right? So it's like do everything you can to help your brain function, and you will feel so much better across the board, right? So I think like the quality of life and the ability to go after your mission, to go after your purpose, to have the energy to do those things, right? It's super critical. So I so love that we talked about that today. That's awesome.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us, everyone. This is a wrap on episode 6, and let us know in the comments what topic or what guests you would like to see next week, and we will see you next Monday.
Bye, guys. Thank you.